Hey YouTubers, this is Tim from Tim'sAviationAdventures.com. Today we're going to do a acceptance check on our Turbo Commander 690 Bravo. Okay, it's the morning shift. First thing we're going to do is make sure the airplane is set up in the cockpit exactly the way it should be. So if we get a call for medevac, we're ready to go. And we're not sitting there playing with buttons. So come on into the front office here. And the first thing we're going to start with is the overhead panel. We're going to start on the upper left and work our way across, and then down and come back through and end up at the meters. So first off, we want to make sure that the batteries are in parallel. We're not going to use, unless the temperatures are 0 Celsius or higher than, I think, 32 Celsius. Batteries off, both generators are off. The control bus tie is, the control bus is on. The tie is off, and the distribution bus is on. Cabin is off. Door locks off. NTS is a rocker switch. We'll talk about that more when we do engine starts. It stands for negative torque system. Belts and no smoking. This is a rocker switch. We usually keep that in the middle position off. Cabin lights off. Panel lights off. Always have our position lights and our anti-collision lights on, and then our strobe light is off. We're not going to turn that on until we have a clearance for takeoff or we're taking the runway. Over here is our ice protection. Super important that all of this stuff is off. There's a few of these items that are thermostat controlled, have a thermostat, and will turn off if they get too hot. But most of this stuff, if you're not flying through the air or it's not below 40 degrees, you're going to burn stuff up. So you want to definitely make sure those are off. Prop gen, this is a rocker switch. Talk about that more when we talk about icing. Over on the avionics, we've got two inverters. We want that in the off position, which is the center position, and then all our avionics, our radio 1 and 2 bus, our autopilot, and our radio alt is off. And we come down. If we're not flying during the night, then we don't really care about the overhead dimmer. We don't use our wipers, so we keep those in the off position. Over here, this is the right engine. Horsepower limiter test and off. We keep that in the on position. Engine is in the off position. Ignition override will be in the normal position. This is an emergency fuel hydraulic shutoff. That's going to be in the normal position. Then again, if you look at this little box, this is all part of the ice protection. Defogger for our front window here. Wing lights so we can check if we're picking up ice. And then our boots. And our boots we can cycle, or we can manually expand and contract them. Over here, our landing light. This is a light that will actually extend into the airstream. We usually don't use it because it has a extension limit of 156 knots, and if you forget about that and you exceed 156, you're going to tear that thing off. So keep this in the retract position, and looks like they've got them in the on position right now. Landing light left and right are on. I think we want those off. Fuel hydraulic is going to be normal. This is our left engine now. Same setup here. Engine control switch, ignition override, HP limiter. And then our starters, generators. This is going to show us amps, and if we press this button, volts. So those should be reading 0 at this point. We come down to the main panel here. We usually We're going to file for 14,000, so we've got this set up for 14. And over here we've got our COM 1 set up, and we're talking on COM 1. And then if we need to monitor COM 2, we can just flip that switch. It's usually down. Really old style radios here. This is going to be Albuquerque Center. This is the local Common Traffic Advisory. You can see we have that. We can switch that between A and B. Transponder's 1200 till we get a squawk code. We'll normally leave out of here. We'll actually leave out VFR, and we'll pick up our IFR clearance en route. Then on the far side here on the COM 2, we have 124.17, which is the ASOS for the field. So we'll want to pick that up as soon as we get the engine started. Come down here. These are our engine instruments right here. And we always want to make sure in the Turbo Commander, when the power is off, our horsepower indications should read 700. So they do, so that's working. Then this is our fuel counter. We want to make sure that this is reset from the last flight, and that this little lock is in place so that it actually counts the fuel consumed. Next thing we're going to do is come up here. We're kind of staying in the middle of our flow here. We're just going to turn the battery on, and we're going to check our fuel quantity. And you can see we're sitting at about just south of 1,400 pounds. So we want to make a note of that on our acceptance sheet. The other thing we can check now is our Annunciator Lights. You can hear that horn, very annoying. But we can silence that. Now notice we want to make sure that all the lights illuminate, especially the left fire and right fire lights. If those don't illuminate, that means the sensors in the cowlings and the cells there's an issue with them. There's 4 of them total, and one of them has malfunctioned. So it's super important we make sure those lights work. Look up at the top here, we can see our bus tie lights are illuminated, and our override lights for our ignition system. So anytime we're going to override, if we're in visible moisture, we're going to turn the igniters on. Those lights should illuminate. Down at the bottom you can see our landing gear unsafe light and our 3 green. And then over on the circuit breaker panel, we've got a bus tie light there where we can tie the buses together. That light's illuminated as well. I think that's all we need the power for, so I'll go ahead and turn the battery off. Alright, so we've come through the main panel. That's pretty much everything there. From that point, we're going to go down to the lower panel, and we're going to start from the left and work our way to the right. So first thing we're checking is our bleed select is on normal, which means we're going to get bleed air from both engines. Our pressurization system is in normal, and our override we're not going to use unless we change our environmentals to override mode. And we could manually heat or cool the cabin that way. And then max flow is a 3rd jet pump. If we need additional airflow in the cabin, that's usually off. And then our environmental mode should be off ram air, and doesn't really matter where the auto temp is. We come across to the pressurization system. We want to make sure the cabin altitude is set for airport elevation or slightly higher. Gear is down. Coming across to our quadrant here, we want to make sure we're in flight idle. So we are above the gates. This will actually go below in a ground idle, but we want to keep those up in flight idle. And then these are our condition levers. They're going to be all the way in the low ground mode. Prop sync is going to be off. and the taxi light is off. The parking brake is off. We usually don't use it unless we absolutely have to, and we certainly don't leave the airplane on the tarmac with the parking brake on. We'll chalk it. Coming down, we want to make sure the autopilot is disengaged, which it is. Just a small little switch right there, and nothing to see here. Pretty much a Garmin 500. We'll come across. We want to make sure our flaps are up, and then we're going to check our massive circuit breaker panel here. We want to make sure the bus ties are not tied. We have two. We have one here, and then we have another one over on the far end there, which is the radio bus ties. Everything else looks to be in. And we do have another set of circuit breakers over here. And this is our AC circuit breaker panel, which is what the inverters are supplying power to. We want to make sure all those are in as well. A couple other things I check. Down here we've got this switch right here, which will change your microphone from your boom mic on your normal headset to the oxygen mask, which is up here. So if that thing is switched to mask, you're not going to be talking to anyone on your regular headset. So you got to make sure that that is in fact turned to boom. And I check over here as well. And then off on the corner here is our oxygen. We're looking to make sure we have 1800 psi, and I can check it here. I also check it in the back, and we'll do that when we do the pre-flight inspection of the aircraft. And that is pretty much it. If everything is set up like that, then I'm happy, and the plane is ready to go. So hope you enjoyed this little video of the Turbo Commander 690B. You know, I've done a lot of searches on YouTube for Turbo Commander videos, and there are very, very few. So I thought I would kind of fill that void by giving you as much information as I can on the Turbo Commander, and kind of learn with me as we go through this journey as a medevac pilot. So hope you enjoyed it, and excited about what's to come. And if you enjoyed it, please subscribe and check out my blog, timsaviationadventures.com. We'll see you.